Hello my children, it's time for a new swatching video. Let's unleash some chaos with Mooncat's new Pandora Unboxed collection. Wait a sec, I can wear something more fitting for this video. Much better. Mooncat just released 9 polishes inspired by the myth of Pandora's box, ranging from multi-chrome to shimmers to magnetics to even a glow-in-the-dark polish.
Cerberus, give it to me. Thank you.
So let's satisfy your curiosity with a swatch it. Well, that's immersion breaking. I split the polishes up into 3 sets, and first up are the 3 magnetic polishes, all shown with a cat-eye style magnetization. I started with Pandora's box. Mooncat describes this polish as a wine burgundy magnetic lacquer filled with a purple shimmer that reveals a golden stripe. Now this color looks luxurious. The wine burgundy is a spot-on descriptor, and the golden magnetic stripe pierces through the dark base amazingly. I got this to mostly full opacity in 2 coats, and I was going to stop there, but I noticed an application error, so I did a 3rd coat, which I'm glad I did because this pulls out a blue shimmer in the burgundy base even better. In case you don't know, you should always let the magnetic polish dry over the magnet for about a minute to best maintain the magnetic effect. And be sure to seal it in with a top coat while over the magnet as well. That's because adding the top coat frees the magnetic particles to disperse, so keeping your finger on the magnet helps to keep everything in place while it dries. Next up is Curiosity's Trap. This is described as a blue magnetic lacquer with micro gold flakies that reveal a golden yellow magnetic stripe. I'm telling y'all now, I will be annoying about how much I love this polish. Like most magnetic polishes, it transforms when magnetized, and this one has the most extreme change to what it looks like in the bottle. The dark blue base is entirely hidden by the yellow magnetic pigment. And so when magnetized, all of the components come out and make this stunning color combination. I think it's so striking because the cool base really contrasts with the gold magnetic stripe so severely and just holds a very special place in my heart. Just wait until you see this aura style. And additionally, there are micro gold flakies that almost look holographic and add a nice sparkle to the base that ties the whole polish together. I would like to personally thank Michelle, Mooncat's founder, for this polish because I'm just so in love. And finally, I got this to full opacity in 2 coats. To finish out the magnetics is Forbidden Fruit. Mooncat describes this one as a dark burgundy magnetic multi-chrome lacquer that reveals a color-shifting green to yellow magnetic stripe. For this polish, the base color is almost blood red, but I found it to be quite sheer and it needed a 3rd coat to get to full opacity. This one also stands out against the other 2 magnetics because not only is the magnetic stripe more green-leaning, the polish base doesn't have other specialty pigments in it besides the magnetic stripe, meaning this needed a 3rd coat to cover the portion of the nail that the magnetic pulled the shimmery pigment away from. I think overall this one is quite pretty, and if the base was a dark blue instead of deep burgundy, I think it would look just like the Aurora Borealis. That said, the deep red is nice and I like how it stands apart from the other magnetic polishes in this collection. Editor Nick here. Before I go on to the next set of polishes, I wanted to talk for a moment about how I did the magnetic cat-eye style. I like to put the magnetic wand underneath the nail because if I try to put it above it, I'm a little too over-caffeinated and underhydrated and I get a little shaky and give it a little love tap onto the nail. So putting it underneath, as long as you press hard enough, will make it so that way the magnetic polish will be able to do its thing, and you can potentially do more than one at a time. Okay, back to the aura style now with my husband. To achieve the aura/velvet style of magnetization, you can put your finger to the side of the magnet or hold it in the middle of a horseshoe magnet that somehow I still don't own even though the trend dominated recently. I do have a strong neodymium magnet that I use, but make sure you test what orientation of the magnet is going to achieve the desired effect, unlike we did for the first time. My husband was a willing volunteer to model the style of magnetization. For this style, the magnetic effect makes the polish look like it's glowing because it flashes the magnetic pigment at direct angles, but will show the base color at others. We did his manicure with 2 other Mooncat polishes from the recent autumn collection, and obviously, Curiosity's Trap is still my favorite. The next 3 polishes were ones that I thought would look the nicest together as they all have a green element tying them together. First up is Serpents of Eden, which is described as a multi-chrome lacquer that shifts between shades of green, teal, yellow, and blue. I was impressed by its coverage, as multi-chromes usually are really crappy on their first coat, but I got this one to full opacity in only 2 coats. It looks mostly green on the nail, but in the bottle it shifts to blue and purple at extreme angles, which you can see a little of the blue on the sides of the nail. Overall, I like this one a lot, and I think this polish wins the award of matching its name the best within this collection. And before we move on, pay special attention to it in the next swatch too, as you're able to see more of the shift when it's not directly in front of the camera. Next up is Green-Eyed Monster. Mooncat describes this as a milky white glow-in-the-dark lacquer filled with green shimmer that glows green in the dark. Now she was thin. I know I'm fighting my aggressively stained nails, but spoiler alert, this took me 5 coats to get to full opacity without visible nail line. I do still really like this color because it has this ghostly white base color with green shimmer complementing it nicely, and for me, this polish dries almost matte. I noticed that Mooncat's glow-in-the-dark polishes tend to feel a little gritty, which isn't really a problem, but I thought I should point it out because it confused me the first time I used one. It's hard to describe it exactly, but it feels like there's some grit or sand when you're taking the polish out of the bottle. That said, I'm assuming that's what makes it glow so well because Mooncat really does a great job with glow-in-the-dark shimmer lacquers. Which reminds me, what's on my other hand? It's this polish. I wanted a whole hand of it glowing, so are you ready? It's gonna glow in the dark. She was bright. With 5 coats, it feels like overkill, but it got the job done and it was glowing well into the night. Finally in this set is Root of All Evil, which is described as a semi-sheer deep purple lacquer jam-packed with color-shifting teal to green to yellow shimmer. This one had a really nice burgundy base, and it's quite even on the first coat, which makes me think it might be good over black, so stay tuned for that later in the video. It is fairly sheer, but Mooncat has said that this polish is intentionally semi-sheer, as these kind of polishes have a greater depth in the shimmer. Check out my Prism Parade video to learn more about polishes like this. It looks a lot more opaque on camera because it's directly lit, but from my perspective, it's at an angle where the shimmer isn't shining, so you can see just how sheer the red base is. Looking at it from the side after the second coat, I knew I needed to do 3 coats in order to get to full opacity. Overall, the warm burgundy base plays really nicely with the cool green shimmer, and it almost looks like it could be the same shimmer that's in Serpents of Eden, just with a different base color jelly. Now before we move on to the final 3 polishes, it's time for my call out post. About 80% of my watch time comes from people who aren't subscribed, so if you're vibing with my dad jokes and general silliness, please consider subscribing. Now let's get on to the last set of polishes. I thought these 3 would look the best together with their red to purple gradient color palette, even though they don't have the most harmonious shimmers. First up in this set is the Glory of Innocence, described as a purple and green holographic shimmer lacquer. She was also very sheer on the first coat, but after 2 coats, I was pretty impressed. I did see some visible nail line at this point, so I needed a 3rd coat for full opacity. This polish has a pretty lilac base linear hollow, and while the green shimmer is nice, it sometimes overpowers it, as you can see under the ring light. That said, I think a combination of hollow plus shimmer is really smart because linear hollow polishes can look super bland when they're not in direct lighting and you can't see the rainbow shine. For this one, the hollow is really subtle and you can only see it at pretty extreme angles when the shimmer isn't as activated. While the base color is not something I would normally turn to, the 2 simultaneous effects make it really unique and stand out in my nail polish collection. Next up is Lust for Vengeance. Mooncat describes this as a deep magenta pink lacquer filled with a green shimmer. I feel like this is the color that Medusa would be wearing while she turns men to stone. For me, this one was also quite sheer on the first coat, and it took 3 coats to get to full opacity. It feels like a sister polish to Root of All Evil because it seems to have the same shimmer pigment in it and the same base, but a more berry tone. The green shimmer is stunning, and I love that this polish pairs the shimmer with a base color that's on the opposite side of the color wheel. One note is that I found that the shimmer does have a lot of brush strokes because the base is so much darker than the shimmer itself. And closing out this group is the Arsonist. Mooncat describes this as a deep red lacquer filled with red shimmer, and oh wow, this one was nice on the first coat. Now I'm not a red polish girly, but this one is stunning. And while I know this polish is not for me, I know that some baddie witchy person is going to love this color, and I love that for them. It's a lot more purple on the first coat than I was expecting, not that you can really see it on camera, but the purple base gives it an almost blood red tone to it with the red shimmer. This one took 2 coats to get to full opacity. And here is the whole collection. Overall, this collection is what I've come to expect from Mooncat because they really specialize in iridescent and shimmer magic. And before we get into the macro shots, promise y'all will ignore my crusty cuticles. I think the theme is cohesive with the names of all the polishes, but the color palette was hard to combine effectively. Some polishes may have similar shimmers or magnetic stripes, but they all have different base colors, making a cohesive Skittle Mani a little more difficult. The polishes are $15 US, with the exception of the magnetic polishes, which are $16, or you can get the whole collection for $120 US. And good news, these are not limited edition polishes and will be a part of Mooncat's lineup. Let me know what you think so far in the comments below, and let's dive into the comparisons. Okay, give me the phone. We're putting this on silent. I don't really have anything like these magnetics because most of my polish with magnetic pigment is similar to the base color, so some of these first three comparisons might be a bit of a stretch. Up first is Pandora's Box. I compared it cat eye style to Mooncat's Fields of Lavender. Pandora's Box is a deeper purple color and the magnetic stripe in Fields of Lavender is orange and it pulls a bit more red due to the base color. Since Pandora's Box looks so orange unmagnetized, I compared it to Holo Taco's Xyler Cat Eye, also unmagnetized. Overall, these two are quite similar in style, but Pandora's Box is a bit darker. Moving on is Curiosity's Trap. Unmagnetized, it becomes a yellow, greenish gunmetal, so I compared it with some similar colors. The closest in this group is Firewall by Mooncat, because both have similar base tones, but Curiosity's Trap leans a bit more orange gold, while Firewall leans a little bit more red. The others are either too light or too dark green, but Holo Taco's Chameleon Coat does look very similar when it shifts colors at extreme angles. And moving on is Forbidden Fruit, which is very unique and didn't match anything that I own, so I attempted to dupe it. I noticed that the base color looks very similar to Holo Taco's Devil's Advocate, and so I added celestial lights over a part of it to match the cat eye. Lastly, I had to add a glossy taco to smooth out the shimmer and make it look like part of the polish. So I think this is close, but the shimmer in Forbidden Fruit is way finer and incorporated into lower layers of the polish, which can't be duped with just a topper. And while it's not an exact match, it does give me some ideas for future nail art. Moving on, we have Serpents of Eden versus Para Don't Bother Me from Holo Taco's most recent Birthstone collection. Make sure you check out that video if you haven't seen it already. Now, these are similar, but also distinctly different. Serpents of Eden is a true green multichrome, as the major color is green, while Para Don't Bother Me pulls a little bit more yellow due to the nature of that multichrome. Overall, they have very similar effects, and if you couldn't pick up Para Don't Bother Me before it sold out, this is a pretty close second. And for Green Odd Monster, oddly enough, I have several white shimmery polishes and even one that glows in the dark too. None of them are exact dupes of this polish because this is the only one with the green shimmer. I think Gossamer by Death Valley Nails has a similar yellow leaning base color, but it's more severe than Green Eyed Monster is. As for the glow, it is quite similar to Mooncat's What a Brilliant Nose from their Nightmare Before Christmas collab collection, though Green Eyed Monster is brighter. Root of All Evil was compared to some other multi-chromes in my collection. I have no idea why I grabbed Mooncat's Dark Night of the Soul, because this is super blue, but I think Holo Taco's Mist Shift is super close in terms of the shift itself. That said, Root of All Evil is clearly a red polish with green multi-chrome glitters, and thus stands apart. Now, the Glory of Innocence is quite unique because I only have one other lavender linear holo, being Lavender Syrup by Holo Taco. Mooncat's Ghost Ship Unmagnetized is close, but it's way deeper. While swatching, I had the idea to try to dupe this by adding Holo Taco's green shimmer over Lavender Syrup. Honestly, it's quite close, but the shimmer being mixed into the Glory of Innocence makes it more striking and gives it a deeper impact. Moving on, we have Lust for Vengeance that was initially compared to Redemption Arc by Death Valley Nails. While this was similar in terms of opacity and shimmer, Redemption Arc leans orange-brown versus Lust for Vengeance's deep pink color. I did try to dupe this by putting Holo Taco's I'm Over Brew with celestial lights over it, and while it's close, once again, you can't dupe a shimmer polish just by putting shimmer over it as it lacks depth. And finally is the Arsonist. This was compared to Sacrificial Lacquer Unmagnetized by Holo Taco. I think these two are super close, but the Arsonist is way deeper and has some texture to it that Sacrificial Lacquer lacks. And finally, I wanted to try some of the more sheer polishes over black. I love how deep Root of All Evil became, as it pulls some of the blue portions of the multichrome out over the black. Green Eyed Monster was too opaque to go over black smoothly, which was surprising because of how sheer it was on the nail. Now, Glory of Innocence, I'm freaking obsessed with this. It wasn't a color I would wear before, but putting it over black somehow brings out both the linear holo and the shimmer at once in a way that don't compete, and I love this. Lastly, Lust for Vengeance was just okay. Well, now that we've unleashed this collection, let me know if you're gonna pick up any in the comments below. Are you also just as obsessed with Curiosity's Trap as I am, or is another one your favorite? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more swatching or nail art in the future.
Ah, monster!
Oh, I gotta go slay some monsters. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!